Changing gears a little bit, thinking about the customer side of the business, the sales and business development side, right? Could you give us a little bit of a picture of, what GTM of software in this AI era is looking like? How are not just yourself, but in general, your peers, other players in the ecosystem who you see, right? And network with and share insights with in the ecosystem. How are people going about GTM? How do you, for example, in a situation like yours, right, like where you're deploying sort of like safety, security, surveillance related solutions, and then many other things, right, on the roadmap going forward? How do you go live? How do you communicate sort of this value proposition to the ICP, right? Whether it's the chief operations officer, the factory manager, the CEO, whoever. So I think that'd be a little bit of a good picture. How do you think about sales marketing? How do you think about communicating ROI, value proposition, and thereby identifying, right, these profit pools from where fees can essentially be collected from the customers to pay for the software solutions that you're implementing? I think it'd be an awesome sort of like insight for folks who are building in AI to take away.
Yeah, so that's a slightly tricky one, as you can imagine, right? When it depends on the use case, and the starting point is your TG, right? What TG have you chosen? And I'll tell you one very clear sort of a framework, at least that I tend to use. Say, for example, if you break up a customer population into large enterprise, say medium plus, medium minus, and SMB. I'm leaving out the bottom end mom and pop, right? In B2B. Now, the crucial starting point is who amongst them are you targeting, right? Because very, very clearly, the way you pitch to who you pitch will vary substantially based on that. Okay. So as a startup, very, very clearly, initial 10, 15 customers are always through network and referral. Always, right? You can expand that number for sure, but it will not be lesser than that, right? That's been my learning, right? So for those initial 10, 15 customers, again, who's your end customer? If your end customer is, say, large, that's where you want to end up. That's what you're building the product for. Then you need to start your journey with medium plus for sure. And this is, but it's not my insight. This insight was shared. So I attended a talk by Dheeraj Pandey, and this is something that he shared, and it stuck in my head that you can never jump 2 levels of this hierarchy. Impossible. Can you do it? Yes, it's possible, but probability would be against you. So if you want to target one, at least start with one lower than that. Otherwise, you'll find it tough. And that's been my very, very personal learning also in the last couple of years. So assume large is my ultimate goal. So medium plus I start with. Now in that medium plus, you have to approach the ultimate decision maker. If you're selling, see now you've had your interviews, practitioners, all of that to understand what product you're building. In that, you would have spoken to CEOs, owners, proprietors, right? Globally, in India, whatever. But now you are in sell mode, right? Now you want to go and say that, hey, why don't you work with us? In our stage, we are we are building it out, so it's a design partner discussion. But I have thought through how those discussions have happened, and in my earlier startup as to how do you have those discussions. In a mid plus, you would need to speak to the ultimate decision maker, who would be the owner of the business. It becomes very tough if you go any other route to start with. Now, when you go and speak to that owner, it is very, very important for you to have an initial hypothesis now. You cannot go and in your sell mode, you cannot go and say, okay, what's your problem in life? You will lose him then and there, right? You already passed that stage in the initial 300 discussions that you've done. That's when you ask, okay, what's your problem in life? Ideally, you shouldn't ask it then also. You should have some hypothesis, but still, here, I believe these are some of the 3-4 problems that you are that you're facing in your operations. This is my suggested solution. This is the timeline that it will take, and this is your ultimate benefit. The very important part here is if you're focused on the mid plus, which say I was trying to drive through, the benefit is super crucial. Now, the benefit can be varied. Obviously, the easiest benefit to communicate is money saved. Now, that money saved, you need to be intelligent, right? It could be saving on account of workforce reduction, or it could be saving on account of certain costs that they are incurring today in the form of, say, safety incidents, etc. Or it could be saving on account of brand image, like one large brand that we are speaking to for safety. They're saying that the cost, that's the notional cost there. So there are the your approach has to be dependent on the specific company that you're trying to reach out to. In B2B mid plus, it cannot be a cookie cutter approach. When you go, that's been my learning, if you go lower than mid plus to mid minus and SMB, there potentially a cookie cutter approach works, or you're forced to do because your CAC there is significantly higher in terms your CAC to ARR ratios, right? Those are your LTV, whatever you want to call it. People use different metrics. That's higher as you go down. So there you are forced to do a cookie cutter approach. Here you need to be very specific. Say if I'm going and pitching to Rohit, if you're running a food manufacturing company, where is your company located, what you are manufacturing, to start with, at least for your design partners, it has to be very, very sharp and specific for to solve for the specific problem, right? It almost becomes like a consulting deck, right? Wherein when I used to do consulting, you don't go and say that all the world is facing this problem. To all the world, I solve like this, I will solve like this to you. Nobody will take your business. Like, similarly, in the initial stage, this is your problem. This is how the world is changing. This is how I am playing a part in changing that world, and this is what I can do for you, and this is your benefit.
Sure, sure.
That is very, very clear.
And linked to that, one additional question on the GTM side, right? Which is, and you alluded to it when you spoke about the ultimate benefit that you sort of convey to the end customer, the decision maker. So one of the questions I think that everybody who's building in software often has, right? And we also ask this question to folks when we're trying to understand their businesses, is where is the budget for the solution that you want to sell coming from, right? Is it a solution that pays for itself in terms of, say, being able to avoid certain costs either today or down the line in a shape or form, or expand revenue as an example, as a generic example, and therefore the solution in some ways pays for itself? Or is it there was an existing spend, whether people, whether an existing outside vendor, whether an existing technology provider that was helping to provide some of that capability, but you promise obviously a better and a higher outcome for a similar cost, or a lower cost in fact, because say it's completely automated, there's no people in the loop or far less people in the loop, etc., right, depending on context. So just want to understand any thoughts in your mind as you weighed out these different approaches, right, both for yourselves and in a broader sense of how you're seeing AI getting implemented. You know, what works where? How do you decide, right? Like, do solutions necessarily pay for themselves? Because a lot of people are talking about how AI will generate so much value that it will just pay for the implementation itself. Or is it more still about you have to position this as a competing solution to something else, right? Whether an internal solution, a vendor, a technology, people, etc. And you're saying like, look, I'm replacing that with a better capability at an equal or lower cost, and therefore, or higher cost, right? But the value ratio is overall better, and therefore you should pay me for it. Right. So it's trying to get a sense of where you've seen this land. How do you see companies also think about it, right? Like when the decision maker is doing the math in their head, where am I going to pay for this solution for?
Okay. Very simple. Nobody will not see the ROI. I have not seen a single customer across maybe 100, 200 plus discussions where ROI he will not see. Their approach to seeing ROI might be different. That's the crux of it. Okay. Some When you say workforce reduction, that's slightly tricky, right? To start with, but a 36-month kind of an ROI approach is something that people would be amenable to, right? That's been my sort of a sweet spot, whatever you want to call it, right? Now, but you cannot run away from it. You cannot go in and say that I will digitize your operations. That is not good enough, right? Nobody just will digitize it for the heck of it, right? You will need to answer for ROI. Now, ROI could be in multiple terms. It could be in some cases notional, in most cases it would be actual, right? Now, if you are reducing workers in some sense, you are the low hanging fruit, right? Then you are there. Many cases it may not happen immediately, and that is why this 36-month horizon works. The other insight which I've not reached, but a lot of the founder discussions that I've had is uh, a lot of these AI SaaS tools, outcome based pricing seems to be the end goal or the end place to be. If you have that confidence, your chances of success are significantly higher. The and and that's where the world is moving to. I was just sitting with one ex-colleague who's just built who's a co-founder at an AI martech tool, and they're doing reasonably well, growing uh, uh, reasonably fast over the past few months. But that's been the insight, right? That how does that happen, right? And I think that's key.